This is a man who specializes in door-to-door
Sam
sales.
Taggart, who's a
He
serial
runs, in fact,
entrepreneur.
Sam Taggart with the D2D podcast.
Sam Taggart is his name. So
You guys all heard that, right? 7 of 1,000. Can we change this statistic, please?
A little bit about my experience with Sam Taggart, D2D expert.
You forget where you live and you forget how blessed you are until you come to a place like this, and then you realize that these are the happiest people.
Like they're not stupid. Like they have stronger.
Like we were asked about.
The code to winning, insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow. Today we actually have a very special guest. We have Sam Taggart in the studio. Just a brief overview of Sam Taggart. He is the founder of D2D Con Association. He's a public speaker, an investor. He's also the CEO of D2D Experts as well. Throughout his journey, he's built an 8-figure consulting company in the space of 5 to 7 years as well, including consulting for over 200 businesses nationwide as well. So it is a great honor to have within the studio today the man, the myth, the legend, Sam Taggart.
Thanks for having me, man.
How was that intro, bro?
That was a great intro. Wow. I could listen to your voice all day. I love it.
Actually, speaking of this, as we start the podcast, I know you and D recently went back or went to South Africa to go visit. I wanted to kind of like just get like how was your experience? I tried to like text. I think I texted the wrong number to try and give like the insights or
Well,
things.
we wish we would have had your insights because it was a total letdown, and I'll tell you why. The bucket list mastermind I host where we host 2 to 3 events every year. Where next month we're taking a group to Mediterranean on a yacht, and one of my things on my bucket list was to cage dive with great white sharks. And so I look up places, and it says one of the top places in the world is South Africa.
100%. Cape Town, right?
Yeah, down it's kind of north of Cape Town, and there's a spot that's famous for it. So I book an excursion. I fly, all these people out there to come with me to do this cool thing, cage dive with great whites. Like that's a big deal, right? So we get to the little teeny town. We go in, and we're like, all right, and they're like, oh, just sign this thing, just so you know, you may or may not see great whites. I was like, oh, what do you mean? They're like, well, we haven't seen them in 4 years. I'm like, wait, what did you say? wait, did you just say you haven't seen great whites in 4 years? How are you stating on websites? How are you marketing? How did I just fly across the world?
10,000 miles, bro.
To get here to stink and not, what? I just found this out? So we go out there. They're like, well, we maybe could see some other sharks. The orchid, they scared them all away. And I was like, what the freak am I doing here? So we get in the cage. They're like, no sharks, nothing. They're chumming. They're spraying fish oil all over our faces. It smells like shit. This is terrible. We're like, what are we doing? And finally, a 5-foot shark comes along. We're like, oh, yeah, cool. And it swims away. It was a total of 3 seconds. We're like, really? That's it? And then we drove away. So anyway, my shark diving experience was a very big letdown. But South Africa was unbelievable. We did charity work. We did, tabletop mountain. We did some really cool stuff too. So overall, the trip was epic. It was a bucket list kind of experience. The safari we did in the Kruger Park was unbelievable. But overall, the shark diving, just so you know, don't get sold on cage diving with great whites in South Africa.
That's crazy. So the reason why I say I saw that, I was speaking with Tom Self and Claudia, I think, because they were going with you, including Michael or Donald as well. So they were asking a few stuff to do while they're there. And I found out I missed one number of yours. So I've been sending the wrong Sam. And this person not even responding. I'm just sending all these stuff.
You're like, that dick.
I'm like, Sam, just acknowledge, just click like. I'm out there go to Steers, try this thing. It's similar to America's Wendy's. Try that thing. It's similar to your Raising Cane's. I was just at the point just trying explain in depth of what you could try out. And then when I reached out to you, I think 3 weeks ago, I found out that I actually have the wrong number all this time. So I'm like, Sam is not that bad of a person. He does respond.
Yeah, I do. I'm pretty responsive. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you at least try the Walk with Lions Park?
No.
So that's the one I spoke to you and D about. So there's an actual park. It's about an hour and a half away from Johannesburg. You literally like walk with about 450 pounds of male lions. You sign about like 3 waiver forms, literally at your own risk, because animal instinct can pretty much kick in any time. But it's been safe for the most part. But you literally walk with lions, like lions in person, touch them. The only
That would have been epic. We did that with elephants, but not lions, bro. That's damn it. Gotta go back. Still young, bro. Still young.
Awesome. So I have a question. My very first question I wanted to ask, since you're so, you pretty much are the face, in my opinion, of D2D. Like if anyone says Sam Taggart, it's like, door to door, mainly because you assembled like the D2D Con, which is one of the biggest conferences specifically for door to door con, including for sales. How did you manage to get all these different industries in one specific conference, like one roof, and just make it like pretty much a thing like for the next few years? How was that possible?
Great question. I think the mission, I think anybody, like, if you think of the podcast title, The Code to Winning, winning starts with a good vision.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so it's 2017. I'm on a 3-day meditation fast retreat, and it's day 2. You're hallucinating at this point because you're just like hungry as heck, and you're by yourself on a rock. And I had a vision, and it was just like, you need to help unify, uplevel, bring honor, integrity to the door-to-door space.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we must have some wrong signal here, God. Like that would never work. This is a cutthroat industry. There's no collaboration. There's no tools. There's no training like that. They wouldn't accept it. And it just kept calling me. And so finally I was like, all right, I'll beat this drum. I'll preach this mission across the mountain, and called friends, called homies. I was like, hey, you guys should come and, come to this conference. And everybody's like, no. I was like, so I'm like, what the freak? But then there were a few that did buy in, and I learned a lot through the lesson. We had 850 people show up to our first event, which I felt like was a huge
850.
Yeah.
Some don't even fill that up today.
Yeah. So like for me, I didn't know. I'd never been to a conference. I'd never hosted a conference. Like I had no idea. I was like, well, I have 100 reps, and I know other people that have hundreds of reps. So if I just get like a couple homies to bring 50 each, like we got at least a room, right? Like that was like my mentality. And turns out none of them would bring anybody because they thought they were going to get recruited. It turns out like random people like Tom Self was actually the very first door-to-door con. I didn't even know what roofing was, bro. He flies in from Chicago, hears about it through some who knows what. And I'm like, oh, how'd you guys hear about this shit? Like, you know what I mean? I was just like, what is this? Like, and I'm like, a roofer? What do you knock doors? Like,
How do you even sell the thing?
yeah, bro. And I'm like, oh, wow. So it opened my eyes to, a not only national, but international footprint that I didn't even know existed. I thought Utah was this door-to-door mecca. And anyway, so we've done that for 7 years, going on our 8th year this year. And it's been fun, like in the mission, and we've grown every year. It's funny, I'm at a solar event right now, and I was keynoting, and I had like maybe 300-400 people, not 300 people. And I was like, damn, we had like 3,000 people in the audience, like sitting in chairs, like, because I have chair counts. And I'm like, oh shit, like we're like legit. Like, you know what I mean? Like we have a squad, we have a tribe. Like, and I think it's because like, despite the industry, despite the jersey you're wearing, I think everybody needs a tribe. And our mission is very simple. It's like to bring honor, integrity to door. And I think a lot of people have this shame around the profession, and there's a lack of understanding. And if you haven't done it, you can't knock it. You know what I mean? Like, and if you're not good at it, then the guys that are good at it are like, yeah, you never hack, like less respect, right? But like game respects game, and anybody that can go knock doors and be good at it and make good money at it, there's like a mutual level of respect. Like I know what you go through, and I know what it takes to go be successful at that. And I think that our tribe is strong, and it's been a really fun venture.
Awesome. Speaking of the door-to-door con, I think my very first experience could have been, door-to-door 3. It was a time where John got
Door
his...
4. Oh, John. Oh, 3. No,
so
no,
it was
3.
his first. It was Amy Spencer,
Yeah,
John.
Yep.
the other guy for Anthem. It was only 6 guys for pest control at that time, with the metric was $1,000. I mean, 1,000 accounts for you to actually get a golden door, which at that time was like,
It's a lot.
it still is a lot to this
A lot.
day. Now, the question I want to go to is, over time it's changed. Right now, I think it's about 650 for like pest guys, and I
No,
think
650,000 in revenue. It's still 1,000 accounts. We didn't lower it. We
also it's still the same.
Yeah.
So what kind of like determines the benchmark? Like when you look at that, because right now I think the grid has over, gosh,
They had
20 guys.
34 dudes hit it last year.
What's the metric of the benchmark then?
So we've raised it. So we added 550K in revenue, then we upped it to 650K in revenue because people were doing 1,000 accounts, but 400K in revenue. So we were like, what's more important, 650 grand in revenue or 1,000 accounts? Or some people were like, well, we get paid on revenue, don't we?
Yeah.
And so we added metrics, and that was just pest. And then solar has its metrics and roofing and alarms and windows and all the other home services, right? And so we just said, okay, what are the top 1% doing? And how do we continue to raise the bar? And in solar, we've raised it. Windows, we've raised it. Pest, we've raised it. Because, yeah, we used to have 6 dudes hit it. And now all of a sudden I had 55 golden door winners in pest control this last year. And they're petitioning, you better effing raise it. Because what's crazy is that 4-minute mile. It's like 4 minute isn't so cool anymore when everybody effing goes hits it. It's like, well, now what's the cool?
Exactly.
And so we want to create that like really, I would even say more than top 1%. It's like 0.1% is what we're going for of like, who are the bad, like, I was the number 1 rep at Vivint. They had 3,500 sales guys. And I was the only one out of 3,500 that did 400 accounts that year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, that's the golden door
100%.
number. Like there are a lot of people and a lot of companies will not ever get golden door. Like that's how cream of the cream.
Okay. Then my next question, not necessarily for those that are not good. I want to try and figure out, like, in your opinion, with the people that you've worked with and the variety of different industries and those that are actually the top 1%ers, what's the difference to those that are very good and those that are golden door? Like, what is that bridge that closes the gap between the two of them, in your opinion?
It's not necessarily the pitch. A lot of people in sales, they're like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I don't know if I even disagree with that. I think it's the tenacity between how you're operating and who you are as you show up. So let's say I'm sitting with a customer, an average rep, when the customer gives them some objections, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, I'll come back later or whatever. And they're doing the objection lines. The closer almost has to like turn off what they're hearing. And they're like, despite anything you tell me, I'm not effing leaving this house until we're selling the deal. And like that mentality of like, that's cute, but I know that this is best for you, so we're going to ink this thing. And like they knock a door and they're getting ejections and they're like not even feeling them. Where I think the emotional element of under or middle average people, they get really emotional. Like it's like they feel all the emotions. They have down days because they're like, man, this is hard or blah, blah, blah. The golden door dudes, they don't have down days. Like they're just like, we go out, we're like machines. We have to produce every day. It's predictability. You might have a rough day, but you never have a bad 2 days, 3 days. You might have one, but it's like, I think I bageled 1 day in like 2 years sprint. Like think of that. I didn't come home with a 0, where it was like normal for people to go get 1 or 2 a week, where I didn't miss a day. Like if I'm going to go out, that thing's selling. Like, I don't care if it's at 10 o'clock at night, I will sell because that's how I show up. And it's that consistency. And so like watching, studying, I have a D2D podcast. I've interviewed a ton of the golden door winners, right? And to see the tenacity behind them, the competitiveness of saying, I'm effing doing it no matter what. And just watching how they show up internally for themselves, that's the difference.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for mentioning that. The next question I wanted to talk about, you've dealt a lot with a variety of different leaders, and obviously industries are a little different. With pest, usually the managers are always leading from the front. They're selling, they're in the trenches nonstop. And sometimes there may be like a disparity and a little difference in some cases, like with solar, where you have a bunch of people that are setting and others that are just closing. But my question actually is, how important is it that the leaders are constantly in the trenches with their reps and leading from the front?
Yeah, I mean, you can play both sides. in our industry specifically, it is very important until you at least have somebody else leading from the front. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
100%.
It's like, does everyone have to lead from the front? Yes, until somebody, you know what I mean? Like as long as somebody's doing it. And if you aren't to the level of excellence where you want to be, then better effing do it until you have somebody that is setting that bar for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And like JT, for example, he now had 35 golden doors. Does he need to be in the front trenches? No, he had 35 golden doors doing it for him. But he had to that year, 3 at Door-to-Door Con, because no one else was doing it in the company. So he's like, if no one's going to do it, I'll effing show him, I'll do it. But then what's so fun is like when he goes and says, okay, I'm going to go back in it for a Saturday or a week or whatever, and just to prove his dominance, it's like, think a king gets off his throne. He's like, I'll still kick your ass. You know what I mean? It's
Exactly.
like all the warriors are like, okay, like, yeah, he still would kick my ass. Like,
Exactly.
they need to know that to maintain influence. And it's like, you know, think of Vikings. It's like, okay, like, don't fight the king still. Like, but if the king's fat and ugly, it's like, dude, we're going to mutiny and take over this dude because he's just stupid. You know what I mean? He doesn't get it. And so when you bark
I love that
orders,
analogy.
so when you bark orders, it's like, do they know that you have empathy? Do they know that you know what it's like? And when I say, you're just full of excuses, like, what do you mean? How do you know? It's like, because I can prove you wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm in the same neighborhood, I'm selling the same thing for the same price. And so therefore, like, do I have some magic wand or something? Like, you know, so that this element of empathy, breaking limiting beliefs, this element of like compassion, because like there are times where the leader gets so far disconnected that they don't know how to innovate, solve, adjust, where I'm like, dude, you got to have an ear to the ground, or at least generals with the ear to the ground.
You know, I'm glad that was just perfectly spot on. And I mean, I spoke to you earlier as well. Like, John Taylor is like probably by far like the best leader I've ever had. And it's not even like a friend of mine or anything, but the amount of respect I have.
Yeah, you had respect.
It's just like, I don't need to be like, you know, your buddy, but like from day one, we rocked up there. And like the 5-6 months there, I can't remember him bringing less than 8 pest accounts. You know, like just to do something like that consecutively. And there was a time we actually had a rainstorm in Princeton, New Jersey. It was trenching and raining. And, you know, some of us in our car, some of us are like, oh, what do we do? You could hear him like doing a recording pitch. And I think that day he picked his lowest, which was 8. And he started off from 5 o'clock till like 7, getting like only the second account till the 8th account. And just to see that form of leadership, I don't care whether you like him or not, but seeing people leading from the front like that, it's just like, wow.
Yeah, and it's like no one can take away my trophy of number 1. No one can be like, oh, well, you know what I mean? I'm like, but the scoreboard says Michael Jordan has how many rings? Okay, like, you like him, you don't like him, he wins, right? Like, at the end of the day, everybody will respect the fact that Michael Jordan did what Michael Jordan did, right? Like,
100%.
And he was kind of a dick. People maybe was like, oh, but he's blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but he won championships. Like, and so I think like when a guy that's winning walks into a room and says, all right, guys, pull out your notes and we're going to start training, everybody effing pulls out their notes and says, I will do what he tells me. When a guy that's just training and talking and up there, but not winning and underperforming and hasn't ever done it, he's like, all right, we're going to do a training. Nobody takes out their notes. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
And I see it so often that people are out doing podcasts and shout outs and content and this and that. And I'm like, bro, dude, show me your bank account. Like, you know what I mean? There's so much fake value, fake gurus, fake, let me show you, let me be the preacher, let me be the this. And I'm like, dude, people are smart. They're intuitive. They can read through your bullshit. Like, you can fake them for so long. But the guys that last, the guys that actually like have real long track records and like are winning are the guys that didn't have to pretend. They're like, whether you like the content, don't like the content, I made my money here. Like I am leading you. You don't have to follow or not, because I know how to win.
Exactly.
I just want you to win with me. Does that make sense?
100%.
That's why we're talking. That's why we're coaching. That's why we're putting a podcast out. That's why we're putting like, we're just doing it because we think there's other people that can win as well.
100%. 100%. I love that so much. Which leads to my next question regarding leadership. What would you say then is the most effective way a leader can bring the best out of like the people that they lead. Like, because I heard a saying which I don't fully agree with. It says there's nothing like a bad student, only a bad teacher. What do you think of that?
I agree. So like my 7-year-old, he has ADD, he has zero focus, he has low respect for authority. And you're like, it sounds a lot like most sales guys. So he has the see what I'm saying, bro? Like I'm like, wait a minute, he's got the formula to be a badass sales dude. And he goes and sells lemonade. He comes home with $100 in an hour.
Let's go,
And
baby.
I'm like,
Let's go.
I'm like, oh hell yeah.
Sam, you're about to be dethroned there, brother.
Yeah, dude, I'm over here like I will groom him. But guess who calls every freaking 3 days? His teachers. And guess who just put him in special ed? And then another special ed, his teachers. And I go, cool, because he's not fitting in your like little framework of how you know how to teach 70% of your students that are like, do your homework, read the story. He's like, he reads to us at night, but he doesn't read the words. He summarizes what's supposed to be on the page. I'm like, why are you just making it up? I'm like, just read it, bro. Just read. You know how to read, but his attention's so bad, he just doesn't want to read it. But what's so crazy is he's so smart. He's so quick. He's so socially intuitive. He's such an empath. And I'm like, I need to become understanding of how to teach him so I don't douse his flame. I inspire his gift. So the problem is, like, I was talking to a guy at that dinner last night. He's from Germany, and he learned Spanish. And then he goes to a 2-month immersion in Bolivia. But then somehow a Spanish teacher brings in a Japanese teacher, and he's like, comes in and speaks for 45 minutes. And the Japanese teacher didn't say a lick of English. They were there to learn Spanish. And after 45 minutes of talking, all of them could say the ABCs, they could say the colors, they could say a basic sentence. In 45 minutes, they could all speak a basic broken Japanese. The students. They were there to learn Spanish. And he said, did you see what I did here? He said, I used effective programming as a teacher, never even speaking any of your languages, and you just learned Japanese. You ask, like, an ineffective teacher comes in to teach you Japanese. It'll take you 6 months to probably learn that. But you could learn it in 45 minutes. He proved it. Isn't that crazy? Every student got it. And so I think there can be bad students in the sense of you have an ego, you're not a student. So when you define the word student, in my mind, a student is there actually out of their own free will and choice because they want to learn. The problem is I don't think just because someone has a job or someone has a title or someone's in school, they should have the title of student. I think there's a lot of people just drifting and asleep. So just because you're there existing and your body's there, your eyes are open, doesn't mean you're awake.
Bomb. Wow, that's powerful. And speaking of actually even last night, I actually liked these questions. You guys spent about 45 minutes on it.
Yeah, one question, bro.
I'm out there like, can you answer mine? Can you answer mine? But like, it was actually important. The reason why the mentoring question is coming next is in today's world, like you just flip on Instagram, it's all like these fake gurus. I'm like, bro, like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a bunch of people that are trying to do like coaching. I'm like, bro, what are you
You're 21 years old, bro. Like, I know.
So
I
like,
still feel I have imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? Like, I'm 34. I've made millions of dollars. And I still feel like I'm like, what do I know? Like,
you know, my point is mentoring is important, but it's so hard to try and find like the right ones through this very phony like social media thing. But I don't want to focus on that right now. I know that you still do masterminds and you still attend masterminds and you still try to reach out to people.
I just had a good one today.
Oh, can you share that about that?
Got a FaceTime from somebody I've been trying to network with. Erwin McManus. Do you know who he is?
No.
He wrote the book Mind Shift. He started the church Mosaic. He's like a big old pastor. He's written like 40 books. He FaceTimes me today. He's like, sorry, I've been hard to get a hold of. And I was like, whoa, you're getting a FaceTime. But I paid him a hell of a lot of, in a 10-minute conversation. And I resonated because I read his books. I was like, I align with his message. And then I said, so this is actually, to answer your question, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yes,
I'm going to use Erwin as my story, as my example, because it
100%.
happened literally a few hours ago. Like, this was today. So, you know, I had Dave Meltzer come out to Tahiti with me last year. I had Tim Story come with me to Switzerland on my mastermind. There's certain people selfishly, I'm like, I align with your vibe, so I will try to figure out a way to build a relationship, right? I went to Scotland with Dave, and like, so I'm like, who's next? Like, who do I vibe with, And I'm reading this book, and it just like called to me. Like I was like when you're reading a book, and there's like, oh, that's cool, but like there's times where you're like, damn, that like the value system aligns with me, the mission they're on aligns with me, the track record aligns with me, the people he's helped I align with. Because some people, they're picky on who they help. Like, but this guy's coached Oprah Winfrey. Like, like this guy, like he lives in SoCal and has worked with some of the most powerful people. And you're like, okay, well, obviously if they're paying him, and obviously he's coaching these kind of guys, like Tim Story, same thing. Maybe I align with those people. And if he's coaching them, how do I get into his circles? You know what I mean? And so, I figure out a back door. And the back door was I took a chapter in his book he talks about this mushroom and leadership concept. And he's like, do you eat the mushrooms first or second to figure out if they're poison or not? You know what I mean? Like go first kind of concept. And so I'm on the keynote at my main stage, and I actually reenacted his mushroom example on the main stage. I picked the guy out of the stands. I said, I got 5 types of mushrooms. We're all a tribe. We got to figure out which mushroom's poisonous, which mushroom's psychedelic, and which mushrooms are completely fine to eat. We're going to die in the wilderness. And you can either pick somebody out of ants to be the guinea pig, but one of these mushrooms is going to make you shit your pants in the next 15 minutes. One in about 30 minutes, you're going to be tripping like no other.
And when you're going to die?
And the other 3 are just going to they're totally fine.
Okay.
I was like, you pick, go. And then I sat him on a chair and I said, we'll find out in the next probably 15 to 30 minutes which one you picked. Like live in front of everybody. And like you probably, like the way I keynote, very different than most. I've rapped, I've done shit like that. Like, I don't know. And so I sent them the recording of that. And I said, hey, bro, I think if anybody read a book and did a whole reenactment of a thing that I taught out of a book, I think you'd want to see it. So the way you network to somebody, the way you add value back to them, the way that, kind of finagle your way into where finally he gets a FaceTime and he's like, dude, I watched that thing. I was laughing my ass off, is the first thing he says.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
And he said, before I work with anybody, I really want to FaceTime them because I want to see their vibe. Does that make sense?
100%.
And so then you're like, okay, he's going to read my energy because your energy doesn't lie. People lie. Energy doesn't.
100%.
And when people try to go pick mentors and people try to go watch people on social media, you can be tricked pretty quick, but energy doesn't lie.
100%.
Does that make sense?
I love it.
And so he sees that. You can tell him vetting me just as much as me vetting him. And at the end of the phone call, he's coming to Croatia with us in October. He's coming to Door Con in January. Wow. You know what I mean? Like he's like, all right, let's do this. Let's go to Croatia. Let's you know what I mean? You could tell. Like I was like, hey, I know this guy. Like not trying to be that weirdo. Like I'm not some nobody. Like, but I was like, how can I help you? And like, it's like, what's your mission? Like where are we aligning? And so that would be like one example. It's like you got to have a lot of people in your world that you say, how do I pull a seat up to the table? How do I feel like I deserve the table? And how do I be humble enough to say, I don't know, like there's so much I got to learn. I can learn 100%. From you. I can learn from everybody.
I love everything you just mentioned right now. I actually want to ask a personal question for me. You answered this question last night, and I think it'll also be very helpful for the audience and people out there as well. I struggle with the fact that I'm good at networking, but I kind of also have a bit of imposter syndrome where I'm like, these people are giving me so much value. They're taking their time to come to the studio. They are super successful, but it's like, what can I give back besides a good handshake and a good vibe? How can I add value personally for me to those that are extremely successful? Because I've been getting people coming over, and I've been so appreciative, but I'm like, I don't want to just do a thank you. I don't want to I'll go to your events and stuff, but I still don't feel it's sufficient enough. I'm like, how can somebody add value as they continue to network with those that are super successful and they want to get mentorship from?
3 things that come to my mind. The first one, you said it. Like, I paid Dave. I paid Erwin. He said, how much? I said, how much? And he said, you just tell me. And I'm not going to be like, $5,000. You know what I mean? I'm like, here's 50 grand. Like, it wasn't like Tim's story is like, whatever he thinks fair. I said, well, like, I don't want to be insultive, like, and I don't want to overpay. So like, help me find a range, so it's like, You pay by going and getting a ticket. You showed up. You're not like trying to go and be like the guy that's like, oh, I should get free tickets and not have to pay for it. Like, I got invited May 1st to go down to Tony Robbins' thing on a private jet. I was like, just tell me the number. Like, I'm willing to spend the money. I think too many people, they look for mentors and they accept free. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's not free. Number 2 is, how do you create either a mission or vision? And it doesn't have to be monetarily. Like when you said students, I was like, oh, great. I love helping. I have a street smarts community that's helping high school kids how to learn street smarts, not book smarts. They meet every other Tuesday. They have online education. And I'm passionate about giving back to like younger entrepreneurs. So maybe you're like, okay, he cares about this. How do I make him feel good about what he just did? Mm-hmm. So it might be a charitable give back, might be a mission thing. But the third thing is really important. And I'm going to give you some advice. I don't know what the mission of the point of this whole thing is. So clearly give me the reason we're doing this. He hadn't given me that. I just did it because I was like, whatever, you've been in my events, like that's cool and I like you. But not everybody you reach out to is going to give you that same grace. Exactly. Does that make sense? You've already been to multiple of my events. We already have that relationship. But if you give me like clearly how this is going to serve and give back, and then how is it going to benefit me? Everybody's in it for them. What's in it for you? But like, what's in it for me? So I'm going to say no. If you're like, I have no audience, I have no listeners, I have no reason, and I'm your first episode. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But like, no, you have an audience, you have comments, you have engagement. So how can I now tap into your audience selfishly? Does that make sense? Like, I'm just going to call a spade a spade. Then the third one is, how can you send me a text in 2 weeks and be like, bro, I had like 6 people listen to your podcast that all just said this and it changed their life and the spark went this way. It might be in a year, it might be in 5 months, but it's like when somebody gives you advice, they're like, hey, here's my top 3 books. What do most people do? Oh, thanks. What's a good successful student do? Hey, I read all 3 of your books. Here's a little summary of what I got out of them. And I'm super excited to implement these 2 things. How much cooler of a text message is that when I'm given some advice? That's nuts. Because one person out of 50 will do that. Now I'm like, that guy's going to make it. That guy's a good student. That guy's a stud. Because my advice, my value didn't go on deaf ears.
Powerful. Absolutely powerful. The reason I actually like what you did, I'm going to go back and look at it because you gave a blueprint. Because one thing I can't stand is one of those like, work hard and just visualize it. It's blueprint is easier just to follow the steps and you hold yourself accountable for everything that you're doing and actually measure through a metric and seeing how you're doing as well. So I really appreciate that because I feel like I've had that personally for me where I've like, oh, man, like I need to do more than just like go to a VIP event. I need to do more than just like maybe get a general admission. I want to do more because I feel like they have been receptive because they've seen me at their events like yourself. Yeah. But it's at the point it's like, what you being here is far more valuable than me paying $2,500. I personally feel because it's very educational, not just for me, but for the audience as well. So
I think the people listening to that need to realize that you've spent the money, like you've shown up and you value what you learned more than your $2,500. Does that make sense?
100%.
Where some people, they're like, they don't even value what they learned more than the admission of a book. Like, and so I think that, I asked the question, I'm like, what book would you have spent $1,000 on knowing what you know now from that book?
Can I just quickly answer that?
Yeah.
Number 1, The Secret, and Think and Grow Rich. So I had to like mention those 2.
You know what I mean? Like if you like think of that question, that's such a better question. That's like, what your favorite book? So most people spend $20, $15 on a book, right? You can go buy The Secret for $15. But knowing now that it's changed your life and you've got the value out of it, if I came to you and said, hey, it's $1,000, you're like, done. And I think this is where people misunderstand themselves as their best investment. And so if you're a young college kid or you're whatever, like I think too many people underestimate the value of investing in themselves and their network. But network comes from intention. Like I think some people are like, I got to network. I got to be in. I'm like, bro, but if you have no intention of doing it, like what's the point? Like I was not going to go to this thing in May, but I'm like, oh, those people are going on the jet, Chris Crone and Keaton Hoskins. And you know what I mean? I'm like, for me, I'm like, cool. I gave Chris Crone $15,000 just to his charity because I wanted to go shoot his gun on his turret in the range. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, why does that matter? I'm like, he's a local guy that has a network that would value of me, and I could get, there's collab opportunities. So why do I do that? Does that make sense?
100%. No, that's perfect. No, thank you so much. These are golden nuggets, absolute golden nuggets. Just before we go to the next thing, just going back and touching again on leadership, one of my favorite all-time stories is Alexander the Great. The whole burning the ships thing. We're not going back until we either die by the sword or we conquer. And I feel that human beings over time, we're social creatures, so we often do look up to like those that are like the leaders as well. And in my question into this is, the more sales industries seems to branch out, the more leaders we have, the more unqualified people there are out there that are not really at the standard of leadership used to be back then as well. What do you think it takes to be that ferocious leader that is absolutely just admired, respected, and listened to? I know it's such a broad question, but...
No, and I have a really good answer, hopefully. And I stand by this very heavily. Time and training. Too many people are trying to shortcut the answer to that. I went to school and studied leadership. Bullshit. You had 25 years, that's your leadership of doing this. You know what I mean? Meaning, so many people think I'm going to be this badass leader at 26 years old. I'm like, that is going to be so dang rare. You look back at, like, let's take the Vikings example again. How many hours of like battle training and jousting and fighting in the sword with sticks and like beating each other up?
That's all they did.
And how many real leaders did they have in their army? One. And everybody's competing battles, like, you know what I mean? And it's like they lived for that. That is like literally their profession they lived for. How many people go get a job and then start training? And then they're like, why am I not? I'm like, are you effing kidding me? A doctor had to go to like 15 years of specialty school before he made a dime. Then he gets to cut open you once he got his first job. And that's why he's a professional. And when people are like, I'm a leader, it's like, dude, you filled a vacancy at a company because they had no other options and they're in a hiring deficit.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a leader, you have a title. Like, congratulations, bro. Like, I think so many people are like, they start a sales job, then they start training. It's not like you had 5 years of professional sales training, then got your first sales
100%.
job. Yet then we're asking, why is this sucky leadership? Why is there sucky salespeople? Why is there this? I'm like, because they just started professional sales training, and 95% of the companies don't even have a system of professional sales training. Mm-hmm. They think by doing the job, they're going to become magically better. Some will, but just because you golf every day doesn't make you better. Does that make sense?
100%.
Like, there's golf. I play golf my whole life. I shoot the same today as I did 15 years ago.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Winning Store. In collaboration with my podcast, The Code to Winning, I have started a merch store called The Winning Store. We sell high quality merchandise in terms of shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, caps, phone cases, high quality tumblers as well. The best part about The Winning Store is that we believe in delivering nothing less than excellence. With a keen eye for quality and a passion for style, we curate products that ensure that you always emerge victorious in your fashion game. Are you ready to win? Well, shop right now today at winning.store. Remember, in this game of life, the only way to lose is to stop playing. Here at the Winning Store, we're all about playing to win. So visit us today, winning.store. Get your merchandise today and stay victorious.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you, I don't mean to play devil's advocate, but I don't fully agree with this one. It says hard work beats talent. Now, let me tell you why I don't say that. I feel like hard work is very important, but sometimes people are not so cut out for something specifically. And regardless how hard you do something, and I want to make an example with Leo Messi. I look at Messi. I'm not even a fan of Messi. I'm over a Ronaldo guy, by the way. And obviously that contradicts what I'm saying. But
I will argue that. Just kidding. Go for it.
I'm more an elder guy, but with Messi, it's just talent. And I think I've heard one of his story. It was a podcast, it was a sport podcast with somebody that's played with both of them. And he said there's a time where Messi would FaceTime like his family. He's not doing like these drills, just FaceTime his sons. And after then just gets the ball, takes on 5 guys, takes a glorious goal. The reason why I say that, I feel like talent is just as important. And you can develop that talent, in my opinion. But I feel like sometimes there's so much of brainwashing. Like, just go work hard. You can figure that out. Like,
Yeah.
what's your saying on that? What's your...
I would agree. I think there's favor in the person, and then there's favor in the land. Meaning, you may be standing or planting in the wrong land. Does that make sense?
100%.
And so it's like, cool, you could plant pineapples in Utah all day, baby, and you would have 0 pineapples. You know what I mean?
That's a good analogy, actually.
Alfalfa, you could do pretty good here. So it's like, I think so many people assume that all land is built the same. And we underestimate. So I wrote a book called The Self-Experience. It's all about how do we fully experience our own self, identity, profile, gifts. And I think too many people don't double down on their strengths and they try to be somebody else. It's like, well, my brother did it this way, so therefore I have to. Or my dad told me I needed to. And I'm like, hold on. Just because your dad did that doesn't make, you know what I mean? And, you know, I hate saying this, but like I found my dad sold Kirby vacuums in college. My dad was a successful entrepreneur. I saw all of my uncles are successful entrepreneurs. My grandpa was the best sales guy in all of State Farm in the West Coast.
Wow.
I just found a dude with my last sales summit event. I'm in Arizona. A guy walks up to me. He's like, "Are you related to Grant Taggart?" I'm like, "Nah, I've never heard of that." You've never heard of the Smithsonian dedicated to him in Utah Valley, Grant Taggart? I'm like, "No, what's this?" And I look it up. He's like, he had 20,000 insurance agents back in the 50s. He was literally the best in the world. And he said, my mom was the only employee of his, and she happened to have these extra books that were written to him. And so he just mailed me these books that were signed to Grant Taggart that were like OG sales books from the 30s, literally with dates on them. I look him up, and I'm like, I start to almost like get emotional because I'm like, damn, this like runs in my blood. I call my dad. I was like, Dad, do you know Grant Taggart? He's like, oh yeah, he's my great uncle. I'm like, what the hell? So I'm like, I believe that our DNA actually goes back about 3 generations. So like we have things, traumas, gifts, energies, interests, addictions passed through us generation to generation, even through birth. And so if you think of that, you're like, cool, I have talents that I naturally develop, but like prehistoric to us, just passing through us through conception and through birth, there are certain things that we just have. Does that make sense?
100%.
And if you look at my track record, and now I'm like studying genealogy, like, wow, both my mom's side, my grandpa, my mom's dad, and my dad's side had a very good track record of entrepreneurship and sales. So just in my bloodline, I'm like, oh, that also makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My 7-year-old, that's a stepson of mine, not mine, just genetically makes sense. But he also has 4 generations of addiction. His dad is like basically homeless, in and out of prison without a driver's license. So I'm like, if I don't recorrect this, because his grandpa lives in a like basic shack in a basement with his dad that is an unfinished basement and doesn't have a driver's license. Your addictive behavior with ADD and lack of authority and discipline is going that direction just through epigenetics.
Wow.
I need to do something about that. Does that make sense?
100%.
And he has talent out the wazoo, but he never learned discipline and hard work. And that is one thing my dad taught me, that obviously his grandpa didn't teach his dad. Does that make sense?
100%. No, that's perfect. It's true. It's so underrated, like the things we inherit as well, the people we decide to marry as well. It's a good thing to do, like a nice historical thing, because if you end up having children with them as well, understanding things that can be inherited. I had to go for a tall woman because I potentially want a basketball player. So we will see if we get a Steph Curry coming out of that. Like we'll play it by ear over time. So
Love that.
anyway, I had a quick question. So we always talk about like the wins we have in life. We always talk about the experiences. Are there any setbacks that may have occurred in your life, awful investments that you perhaps want to touch on that you've probably learned from and you can definitely avoid seeing what you know now?
None. No, I've had a lot. It's funny. I think, I was thinking about it the other day. Like I was joking because, you look at us on Instagram and you're like, man, you must have the most epic relationship. And I'm like, yeah, we're like madly in love. But we also like, she woke up at like 1:30 all pissed the other day and I talked to her till 4 a.m. like just trying to talk her off a ledge and fight, what I mean? We're cussing at each other and like, what I mean? So I think too many people think like everybody's got this like perfect like Instagram image. And so I've made a lot of investments. We have a real estate fund. It's $12 million right now. We're raising capital for. We have, I have over 100 doors in real estate. I've always been passionate about real estate. And all of a sudden this guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, I'll give you, 30% return every 6 months. Your money's paid back plus 30% on this like banking thing with like small business loans. And I was like, oh, okay, here's 50 grand. He texts me like a month later. Hey, your thing's performing well. You're on track to get like 28%, like we said. Oh, here's another 200 grand. Because every like 4 weeks he opened a new round. Yeah, I was like, haven't heard from him in 3 years, bro. Like he's just gone. Like 250 grand, just gone. And like, so what's interesting is you got to look at investing, or you got to look at like that. You asked like kind of two things, hardships and investing. So I'm taking the investing one. It's like for every time I invested good investments, I have some bad ones. And I think the problem is too many people don't even take the chance to invest in fear of all of them will be bad. But I just got a $40,000 check literally on Friday from a mobile home park that I'd put 100 grand in 5 years ago.
I saw your story.
You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, it actually paid, like it did the thing. Like I got my, and then money's still riding too. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, that was a cool distribution, dope. So I think like, and I forgot about it. Like I was like, oh yeah, I forgot it. Like I was like, what is this? Like that's it's these check on the mail, and I was like, oh, usually like spam, like trying to sell you something. And I'm like, oh, that's like real, like, and you have some like I've had a lot of wins, but I think you don't get the wins unless you have the risk to have the losses.
That's powerful.
I also think your life story is really boring unless you're trying to solve bigger problems. And when you're solving bigger problems, comes bigger problems. Does that make sense?
100%.
Like you're willing to take on bigger problems. Like if I was like a single solo sales rep, the only problem is me, right? Mm-hmm. When you've got 100 sales reps, like today I had to have drug test one because all the other sales reps, that guy's acting crazy and he's had a history of drugs. So can you go piss her? And like he just texted me 10 minutes ago. He's like, negative, bro. Like piss off. And I'm like,
sorry for laughing.
Yeah, but see what I mean? Like I have to deal with that. Like I have to deal with that. Like, and I had a great employee that I had to let go, and I thought everything was cool. And somehow he connected one of our accounts to his like a processor that was just one of many. Like we have many ways to collect payments, and one of them that was probably 10 to 30 grand a month, nothing crazy, would just distribute into his bank instead of our bank. And when you're doing millions of dollars of business, a couple hundred, 10 grand, 15 grand, you don't catch that. To him, it's like, bro, I'm just getting these checks. Like they're just coming in. And I don't even know if he meant to, like, but after 2 years of that happening every month,
Wow.
that adds up. And I had long not even worked here. He'd been gone for 1.5 years. And all of a sudden I find this out. And I was like, what the hell? You call him up and you're like, hey, and he's like, oh no, what are you talking about? I was like, well, clearly this is not my account. Is this your account? He's like, hold on. He calls and hangs up. I was like, what? I call him back, bro, what's going on? He's like, well, hold on, let me get to an attorney. I was like, what do you mean an attorney, bro? I'm just asking a simple question.
Oh,
Did you have the money? Yeah, I was like,
that's guilty.
I'm like,
as
an
heck.
attorney,
Come on.
bro? Like, what do you need an attorney if we're just having a man-to-man? I was like, can you just pay it back? Like, what's going on? He's like, has no money. It's spent it all. I'm like, how do you spend that much money? You're a single dude. Like, where is it all? No one. And like, he was working for another one of my buddies. So I call him up. I was like, bro, like, what's going on? He's like, oh my gosh. I was wondering how he always had like $1,000 shoes every other time I see him. You know what I mean? Like I'm over here like, what the hell? You know, and those are like hard $250,000 later, you know, you catch and you're like, so like, I think people think business is rainbows and butterflies, but the problem that I find is the emotional resilience I learned from door-to-door sales has now translated super well when I have to deal with firing a cat, or I have to deal with somebody stealing, or I have to deal with some competition. I've had people rip off and copy my shit and break off and start their own things and, you know, talk. And I'm like, it's like door knocking, you know?
Yeah.
You deal with it.
That's
You move
crazy.
on. You're a winner. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, with these experiences that you're mentioning right now, what are some of the ways you'd say sales reps can avoid making these lavish payments? Because sometimes, you know, you're in an industry, you make more money than you've ever made in your entire life, and you don't spend it wisely. I've done that a few times when I was doing pets before the transition to solar. Like, what advice would you give people to rather invest wisely, and what could they potentially invest in? Sorry, I keep asking two questions.
No, these are really good questions. So I'm going to go back to this whole training thing. People want the shortcut. They want to be the best leader without putting in any of the time. Does that make sense? Like, I
100%.
still feel like I'm learning leadership. I'm 34. I've been managing teams since I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm looking at this and saying, people want a shortcut. So that's why Bitcoin was so appealing, is because everybody's like, oh my gosh, I made like 20% this week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and you lost all your short because you bought it at the high. Like, so the words of Warren Buffett, it's like pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. And I think the boring investments tend to always be the ones that perform. And so your big majority of your asset portfolio, in my opinion, should allocate towards investments that have a history of winning year after year. And they're not fun. You're shooting for an 8% return on your money. You're shooting for hey, I'm stoked if I got a 10%, bro. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
look at all the rich people, they will all tell you that. And it's the broke ones that are living ups and downs in life that are all chasing that 30% every 6 months, bro. I'm like, did the math. I'm like, dude, if I put in 500 grand, think of that. That's 60% a year. And yeah, the dude took all my money. And I did this infinite banking, this tax strategy with this insurance play. I put in like 300 grand. They're supposed to like pay me a no less than guaranteed, you know, market universal index life insurance with a 14% cap, right? Like that, I put in 300 grand 15 years ago. Its cash value today is worth 16 grand.
Wow.
I'm like, how? Oh, we didn't tell you about all the fees and all the other not managing it right. You're like, how is that even possible? So when it sounds too good to be true, it is. Like, does that make sense? Like, I had a guy today. He's like, you just put in $3,500, we'll get you a $400,000 tax break. I'm like, bro, I'm not 12. Like, go sell some 21-year-old rich kid. You know what I mean? I was like, just piss off. That's what I had to tell him. I was like, you can go convince some other dumb door-to-door sales guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
And so, you know, I have a real estate fund. It's a $25K minimum. We pay an 8% preferred return. You split everything above that 50-50. So you get 15 to maybe 18% on your money.
Mm-hmm.
It's value add, basic real estate apartment complexes, meaning 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 1-bedroom, boring mid-market apartment complexes.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going after high rises, Airbnb. We're not going after the fancy like multi-million-dollar home. We're not going to. Everybody, bad or good economy, needs affordable housing. They need a roof over their effing head.
100%.
Not sexy. I wouldn't live there, but I would know that people need to pay their damn rent.
And do you have like a thing for door-to-door guys to actually try and like invest in like the
Yeah.
Okay.
The D2DFund.com.
Okay. I didn't even knew that.
Yeah. The D2DFund.com.
Okay.
And my partners, so then you're like, Sam, why you? I'm like, dude, I'm going to take your advice, my advice. Ready? I partner with Kent Clothier, who's done 7 funds, Greg Herlin, who's done 20 funds, Alex Gerhardt runs a $150 million construction company out of Ohio that does residential, multifamily, and Kent does over 1,000 real estate transactions a year. Greg's raised over $1 billion of deployed capital in real estate. So it's like, why do I pick partners like that? One, because I just want to be like, yeah, I can call them anytime because they're my business partners. But 2, I'm like, I'm the door-to-door guy. Yeah, I have 100 homes. Yeah, done really well. Like, but why not partner with dudes that just like, this is what they do in their sleep?
100%. No, I love that so much. Before we actually even go to the next topic, the reason why I often love the seminars and the events, the reason I like the in-person ones is when we often get like a different view and the more raw and real version of somebody. Because it's when I found out that you were divorced previously as well. And the reason I want to talk about that, what was the hardest part of like being divorced?
It's hard. It's a feeling of failure. I was a kid that liked to win, as you can tell. So when you feel like you can win at everything and you feel like you're failing in the home, it's not a fun feeling. Because you're like, what really all matters? Like, why am I doing this? You know, most people when they have a profession, they're making money, they're like, I'm trying to set up my life for my family, my wife, provide. But every time you pull in a garage and you walk in, you feel like you're going to get your handed to you for just, I don't know, like.
I'll let people know who the real Sam Taggart is.
Yeah, like, but it's just, it's not a fun feeling. Like, you're just like, I want to win in all categories: health, family, money, business. And that was a hard time. Like, but what's crazy is it's like, would you rather be happily unmarried or unhappily married? And so I had to make some hard decisions. I went to 7 years of counseling, 4 different counselors. We worked on it for a long time. And I got to a point where I was like, I'm just done. Like maybe I need to stop looking at this as failure, and maybe I need to start looking at this as a new page I get to turn in my own book of life. And I think too many people get self-destructive. And what's crazy is, I was lonely for like a day. And then I was like, let's get over it. And I got to make a decision. And so the day I decided to get divorced, I was at my buddy's wedding in San Diego. I was in his groomsmen party, right? Coincidentally, I'm at a wedding, right? And so he goes that morning and he goes, I'm going to go write my vows. And I go, I'm going to go write my vows. He's like, what do you mean? I'm going to write my post-divorce vows.
Wow.
I said, I'm going to vow to my next relationship. I'm going to vow to the single version of Sam. And so I wrote a solid vows to myself. And it just was a quick, I'm over it. And I moved on and I like woke up. And I had the most transformational time in my life over those next year and a half, 2 years. Healthiest I'd ever been. People were like, whoa, dude, you're hotter. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm talking like happier. I was a better dad. I like woke up as a father. Like I'm telling you, like I made more money in 1 year than I had made the previous 5 years. Like, because I made a decision.
And you stuck to it.
I said, you know what? I'm not going to let this break me. I'm going to let this make me. And I'm going to inspire people in relationships to play by the game of change the team or change the team. And so it's like I worked 7 years to try to change the team. We worked on each other. And I got to a point where it's like, it's just time to change the team. And that happens with employees. That happens with partners. That happens with relationships sometimes, hopefully not all the time. And it's something I just decided this is how I'm going to play the game.
Awesome.
It's hard, though. It's hard.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It wasn't like initially a question I wanted to ask, but it crossed my mind. It's just, by the way, if you follow Sam and D, everything you see on social media is actually authentic. Like I've been around you guys. It's just
go follow Adventures of Sam and D. That's the authentic account.
Do you guys actually have a like a couples seminar kind of thing, or like a couples conference that you guys holding? Or are you thinking about doing it?
Yeah, we do. My wife has a.
These good people, man. You married up respectfully, bro. Respectfully, bro.
She is the hottest thing. She is so freaking fun. She snowboards. She mountain bikes. She kicks.
I spoke to her for like such a long time, like that at one event. I just couldn't stop talking. She's just authentic, dude.
She's a wizard, bro. We're in this conference today, and I'm like selling this client. Like they're joining my mastermind, and at the end, she's like, "Hey, before you go, can we just like pray together?" Like and she's like says this like deep, authentic prayer, for, like wizardry, like deconstructing. This dude starts bawling. I'm like, "Yeah, that's D. Like you're gonna get to know her." She's amazing.
No, the reason I also want to talk about the D story, I know we don't want to talk about like a whole couples thing, but you wrote a story that I like. You wrote all these characteristics of your future wife before you met D, and you found out that she met all the criteria. Can you just share that real quick, please?
Yeah, so I went through the single phase, right? I dated a girl on and off, and she was amazing for me, perfect at the time, and that was a great chapter. And, then I got single again, and I was kind of like living the single life, and I realized I was like, I don't want to go down this path. Every good king needs a queen. And I think too many people are devaluing the family, marriage. I think they're devaluing, and it's just sad. It's sad for men to be like, I'm going to just live together. Like, just own up. It's like you're not a king if you don't tie the knot, bro. And so I kind of got to that point, and I went to a seminar. Or no, I had a guy come speak at my seminar, and he was like talking about designing things, like designing an employee, designing experiences you want, designing income, and he's like, you can design people, and he's like, even a relationship, a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I designed my wife down to the nose. It's like, down to the nose. Yeah. And I was like, okay. He's like, well, just go write out every attribute you want of her. And so I did a exercise the next morning, and I wrote out a full page. And a month and a half later, blonde chick pops up on a date, and I was like, wow, you're like fitting everything. We date for like a month or two, and I was like, wow, she's got daddy issues, communication problems, like insecure, like just not good. Like I was like, I wasn't meticulous enough. This is where I think most people go wrong when they're working through their lifestyle design, is they're not meticulous enough. And they're afraid to be meticulous because you're being too picky is what most people would say, right? Sound of business, like, how people would judge you. They're like, hey, I don't like how this cup is sitting here. Like homeboy was like, hey, move your wallet and your water. He's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't care if it's in frame. He's like, no, you want this to look good, don't you? Touche. He was being meticulous. And shout out to the media guy. So, some people are like, that's OCD, that's overrated. He's like, no, I want this to be good. So I was like, I want this to be good. I don't want to mess up twice. So I wrote 4 pages. So down to the love language characteristic, like I'm talking, she likes to do these things. She has this like body type. She has this, like, I'm talking details on, like, even don't want to go into, like, and a month and a half later, like clockwork, she pops up. First night, we're at my house, like after an amazing date. I was like, this date can't end. It's like, I figured out a way to get her to come over. I was like, I drew you up. She's like, what do you mean? I was like, read this. She's reading her autobiography. She reads all 4 pages, and she's just like, what the freak? Like, wouldn't recommend going that route, but she was in a place in her life where she was calling in that. She was designing. And when you find those 2 things, like, the universe wants to it wants to bless you. It wants to give you what you're trying to ask for. Like, and boom, we haven't like missed a day or a beat ever since.
That's so powerful, brother. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've heard that story twice before, but they had to listen to it one more time as well. So appreciate that. Now shifting over again, just towards another topic I wanted to talk about. I know you probably know Mark Randolph, the guy for Netflix, and I read something. I actually watched one of his reels that he put up there. He was talking about how there was a time that Blockbuster almost overtook Netflix. Now, he spoke about how they released version 1 of something very similar, which was awful. Version 2 was a little better. Version 3, which was the all-access rental. And there was a time there was a dispute between the CEO at the time of Blockbuster and, like, obviously the owners. And he ended up, like, they never came to an agreement. They hired a new CEO who ended up coming over and saying, listen, we're not doing this thing. It's way too much money. It's ridiculous. We're going to stick to what we know. And that was the first time Netflix had a break. And from then we know how history ended up taking. Now, the reason I actually want to talk specifically about this, there's a genuine concern over door-to-door and how things are shifting more towards online and virtual as well. Is there a way that you feel like door-to-door could end up becoming a bit obsolete considering what's happening with the virtual world?
Absolutely not. And I stand by that. The reason I think it'll only grow exponentially over the next 10 years is because things are moving towards more and more lack of connection and just like AI robot. And so you look at like social media. For a while, the Alex Hormozy kind of Gary Vaynerchuk videos was like, that's how they blew up. You go now, everybody, you can have AI do 100 videos with one podcast, make it for you. So it's the creativity, the obsolete, the tool is now not as functionable. So on social media, actually what they've changed algorithms to do is be more authentic, like something that's more handmade on Instagram, and so you look at that. So let's think about like everybody's flooding towards digital marketing. Everybody's getting louder and louder and suppressing and saturating your email list, your text strip, does that make sense?
100%.
So it's just getting more and more competitive. And so where are people not going? Right to the source. Does that make sense?
100%.
So it becomes more valuable going against the grain. Like when everyone's buying, you got Warren Buffett selling. When everybody's selling, you got Warren Buffett buying. Does that make sense?
100%.
And so I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a shift in polarity of like, it's pleasantly nice to talk to a good sales professional. It's pleasantly nice to actually like have somebody I can call and talk to instead of some robot I'm trying to get through to somebody and ask questions and it's like AI responding on an AI automation. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's like, that's cool and it can create some efficiencies. And I think there'll be some disruption in door-to-door in the sense of who to go to, why to go to them, the follow-up, the pre-warming, all things like that. But you're never going to replace tribes, connection, community.
I really appreciate that. And the reason I also like that my transition after my internship, it was after 2021 and was when I switched to solar, but it was the first time people were actually knocking doors post-COVID, and it was like my best year combined all the past, And so I feel like that connection is so important. Like I've had people often say, what about a virtual like podcast? And I'm like, I'll work according to your schedule because I feel like there's often in-person has a deeper connection and deeper communication, deeper understanding, and it's a bit more personal. Not that I'm disputing against virtual podcasts, but I just feel like I'm connecting a little better with you rather than just having you like communicate through like a thing. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, boss. So as we now conclude, as we're coming towards the end, I wanted to just like easing things up, and you love sports, I love sports. I'm going to ask you your opinion between different people. I hope you don't dispute with me, or else we'll end the stream immediately. But let's start right now. We have Kobe, LeBron, Michael. What's your order?
Michael, Kobe, LeBron.
All right, you have a chance to redeem yourself. Messi, Ronaldinho, Cristiano Ronaldo.
Messi, Ronaldinho. I served my mission in Argentina.
I was about to
bro.
say, that's the reason why you're being biased, but deep in your heart, you
and
know
I went to a Barcelona game, watched Messi. But reason being, I just like to look at track record. He just won the effing World Cup. He's like you know what I mean? Like Michael Jordan, track record. And I think a good ball player knows how to create a great team.
Then Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, or my guy, Lamar Jackson.
Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson.
Sam does not like me, bro.
Again, Tom Brady switches to Buccaneers and still wins it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that kind of move is huge.
Awesome. So the last two questions. Obviously, knowing what you know now and your experience, what advice would you give younger Sam, just straight from Argentina, knocking his first door, considering your accomplishments and everything you know now? What's the best advice you'd give younger Sam?
I think trusting your intuition sooner. I think too many times we are afraid to make some hard decisions, if that makes sense. Like we're afraid of judgment of our parents. We're afraid of our company boss. We're afraid to let people down. And in turn, we sacrifice and compromise letting ourselves down.
100%. Thank you so much. And then we ask all these guests the question. This is the final question we ask. Since, the code to winning insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow, what, in your opinion, is the definition of winning?
I have an interesting definition today than maybe I did when I was 25. And when I was 25, scoreboard. That's it. There's no like, you know what I mean? Nobody like is like, oh, well, we all get participation trophies, but we all won. No, there's a winner and there's a loser. And am I on the top of the charts or am I not? Was I first at Vivint or was I third? They can't brag. Like I had a guy come and I respect, bro. Like I talked to a client of mine. He's in my mastermind. He was signed up to do 100-miler. Bold already, right? It's a trail run. I go up to him today and I said, hey, congrats on the race. I saw you ran the race. And he's like, thank you. I was like, well, how was it? And he's like, well, I'm kind of pissed. At about, some point in there, I missed one of the turns. It was a direct left-hand turn and it was a loop 5 miles and then kept going. But I missed it and I realized like I'm quite a ways into the race. And I'm like, there's no way I went from 9th to 3rd. And he's like, I'm not in 3rd. Like, how did I just, they're like, no, you're doing good. And at some point he was doing an out and back and he realized I never passed these guys. So he figured out he missed the 5-mile loop. And he's like, well, I can't just like win. Like I can't feel good about taking 3rd. And so he capped out at 65 miles and said, I'm done. And he's telling me this story and I was like, wow, what a respect, right? Like in my mind, he's like, I don't feel honorable. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like, and part of me was like, bullshit, bro. Go freaking run 5 more miles. Because he's like, yeah, and they did that. Another girl missed that same turn, and they drove her back. She ran the 5 miles, and they picked her back up, and then she picked her. I was like, good for her. She finished the 100 miles. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Where he's like, I did the honorable thing. I didn't want to I wanted to run the course how the course was built. I was like, that sounds like an excuse. Does that make sense?
100%.
And I was like, you're probably just tired at 65 miles. And like respect, bro. Like 100 miles, 65 miles, that's a long ways. And so I just, I look at it, and I'm like, to me, that's losing. Respect on the integrity. But number 2 is, did I set an intention and honor and keep that intention? And maybe the intention, so today's version of winning, is if my intention is to be 10th in the company and I got 10th in the company, that's winning to me. 100%. Is my intention to make 100 grand and I made 100 grand? That's winning to me. Is my intention, doesn't have to be a tangible, measurable thing, is my intention just to live a life more peaceful? And you're like, you need to do more, you need to be this, you need to whatever. I'm like, I'm eating a funnel cake today. And I intended to eat, I'm at Disneyland, I'm going to eat a funnel cake. So piss off dieting people, I'm going to enjoy this funnel cake. Does that make sense?
100%.
I'm winning. Where the guy that's like so by the book and dieting, blah, 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 he's actually losing in my mind. Because he's stuck, trapped, not living life. Because in life, it's about motivations and intentions.
Powerful. No, thank you so much. If you could let the audience know where they could best connect with you, we'll have the link in the description section. What's the best form of social media to connect with you?
Yeah, probably Instagram at the Sam Taggart. You can follow our business accounts at D2D Experts. You can find that basically YouTube, anywhere. But if you really want the authentic Sam, nobody knows about this account. We have 1,000 followers. It's like,
I don't even know this account.
Adventures of Sam and D. That's the authentic where we actually post our real shit. But
is it like a private account?
Might be, but you can follow it. Okay. I don't care.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Sam Taggart. It's a great honor to have you in the guest today. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. You have made it this far. Grateful. Thank you very much for joining in the Code to Winning podcast. Please click the like button. It helps with our algorithm as well, including subscribing to the channel and putting the bell notification as well. Like I said, really appreciate you just joining us and tuning in the Code to Winning podcast. The Code to Winning, insights you need today to seize the world tomorrow.